I made it. I finished all 10 episodes just last night, actually, of the new HBO Max show, Raised by Wolves, created by Aaron Guzikowski, and then obviously with the influence of Ridley Scott and Luke Scott, who lend their director's eyes to the show as well. If you're wondering why I'm making such a big deal about finishing a show, it's that I don't often do so because they very rarely tend to capture my attention for something like a 10-hour duration, as we see here. I did do a video where I reviewed episodes 1 to 3, and I decided if I was going to continue or not. And if you haven't watched that video, then let me tell you. So I was taken in by the aesthetic. I was captivated by it. I was hypnotized by it. My art background and my love of art in general, I think, had something to do with that. And I've just always really loved the aesthetic of Ridley Scott's films. And now this isn't his film, but he produced it, as well as you can see there's just a heavy influence here aesthetically. But was that the right decision? That is why we are here today. Did I waste my time? Was I intrigued by the pretty pictures and then served a very calorie deficient dish? Well, let's talk about it. First of all, the hook. What is this thing about? So those of you who haven't watched the show and are considering it, let me give you a brief synopsis. So it is in the far future. We are introduced to two characters in media res. We have father and mother, who we very quickly learn are androids sent with these human embryos to do what? Repopulate civilization? We're not quite sure. But anyway, they crash land on this barren landscape that is kind of this bleak beauty to it, and then begin raising these children. And then quickly the perils of this planet start to affect everybody, and many of these children succumb to these dangers until we're left with one, our hero, our chosen one, Campion. And no, I did not say champion. I said Campion. Yeah. So outside of that, outside of this small settlement of these androids and these children, we have another opposing force. These people of the Mithraic religion, and they worship a sun god named Sol. Now you can just think of these people as almost the Catholic Church, right? So the androids and the people that they bring, or the embryos they bring, represent atheism. That is the ideology they follow, and the Mithraic people are at odds with them, clearly. We have belief versus non-belief. And we are shown glimpses of this story, glimpses of this history throughout the first few episodes, not so much later in the series. Those tend to have to do with more of the present moment rather than resorting to flashbacks a lot, which I appreciate. So then we are given this narrative that is intimately epic. And what I mean by that is that it is about big ideas with a small cast of characters and not many locations. Hopefully that's intro enough for you that gives you the idea of what this thing's about. Now, what did I think? Well, speaking of story, let's start with just the intro sequence itself. Now, I know that seems a little bit odd, but I really appreciated this one. I think that once True Detective hit season 1, we were inundated with so many of these elaborate intro sequences, and while they were cool at the time, I feel they got a little bit played out. And what the intro here does is it tells the backstory of this civilization, sort of how it fell and came to be, and even the last shot of the intro ends on these two androids landing on the planet from afar. And so I thought that was a nice touch. It was artistic. It didn't try just to present pretty pictures for you. I felt like it was a really interesting way to tell the backstory without having to tell it in the narrative itself or episode by episode. And it was short enough to where as you watch subsequent episodes, it didn't feel like you always wanted to skip it. So yeah, in a world of overly complicated and overly flashy intro sequences, I thought this was a great one. I thought it served the purpose of telling the story and setting the stage in a very stylized way, and I thought that was pretty cool. All right, speaking of pretty pictures, let's talk about the aesthetic, and I'd have to say this is probably my most favorite thing. It has a very Ridley Scott Alien or Prometheus vibe to it. We have these big landscapes, very barren, very bleak, a nice contrast of the organic and inorganic. We have sleek sci-fi suits against the backdrop of these like very jagged mountains, and where fog's spilling over them, and we have all these forests and plains of dirt, and I really felt like this is something I hadn't seen before. Now it does feel alien, like I mentioned, but it feels like it's a little bit of a twist on Alien. I don't think it's a direct carbon copy. Now, does this show exist in the same universe? I don't know. I mean, there are similarities, like the quote unquote blood of the androids that mirror that of what's in the Alien series, but I don't really want to speculate too much. After getting to the end, I still kind of don't know. So more on the look. Now, what's unique here is that you'll see that the androids have this very sleek, skin-tight outfit rather than just intricate amounts of detail on them. Same thing goes for the armor. So when the Mithraic people first show up, they almost look like, and I said this in my episode 1 to 3 review, that they look like they are going to Comic-Con, or they look like they are going to a Ren Fair or something. At first I was kind of taken aback, but what I did is I really appreciated what the art department did here, where it has this very retro sci-fi look, maybe I should say Asimovian in a bit, especially with the little swoopy helmets the androids have. I thought that was a cool touch. And so in sci-fi, as you know, we are beaten over the head with overly detailed things where the art department or the art directors, they think that more detail is better and makes it cooler. And this show proves it wrong. This show really showed me something that caught my eye, that really immersed me even, and it created a great atmosphere, and it helped with the world building as well. Now, it is a little weird. I mean, there's a ship that's shaped like a gym whistle, and it may not be for everyone, but I for one really like it. I'm a sucker for the high tech and low tech mashup. I think it just provides a nice visual aesthetic, and everything's very toned down and desaturated and kind of a cooler hue. And it created just this very melancholic atmosphere, which I came to appreciate. So that is my favorite thing. And I think we should probably move down the list of my favorite things to my least favorite things. The second of which being the visual effects. Now, HBO shows have been known to have large budgets, and this one, I didn't happen to look it up, but I can only imagine it's pretty big, even though it's a brand new IP. It's not based on anything that I'm aware of. And it shows. I mean, the visuals are not overdone. They're very well composited and rendered and believable. I mean, nothing stands out to you, and there's nothing worse than watching a film and then the effects just tend to pull you out of the experience because they don't quite match, or the actor doesn't look like they're interacting with this CGI character. But here it was done very tastefully and very expertly. And whoever led the art team here, and then the art team itself and the production design team, man, you guys knocked it out of the park. I think this is the highest of the highlights of the show for me. And it's what kept me going, to be honest with you, because the next thing, the not so good thing, and let's move into the not so goods, I guess, is the characters. Now, if you've watched any of my videos, you'll know that character is my favorite thing. And I think particularly in this show, it is very character driven. And as I mentioned, there are elements that are about big ideas, right? You have belief and non-belief, which I like because it's binary, right? It's not like another religion against another religion, because essentially they're both doing the same thing. They believe in the same things. They're just in different clothes, essentially. So that, unfortunately, is the fault of this. While this had a great opportunity to explore these characters, and they're all given interesting backstories to a degree, most of them anyway, feel like it just falls short. So what I want to do is talk about a handful of the main characters just to give you an idea of what I didn't like about it. Spoiler free, of course. I will try to keep that to a minimum. My favorite character of the show was Father, and he's played by Abubakar Salim. I apologize if I mispronounced that. I had to read it. He is a service android, and he accompanies Mother, and he is named Father, and that is his job. He is there to father the children. And what I really like about this character is that he embodies what you imagine a stereotypical android would do, but in a good way. I mean, he's very mechanical, he's somewhat simple, he's very analytical, but he has these character traits that make him deeper than what you see on the surface. Like he has this habit of telling these very cheesy jokes to the kids to keep them happy and add some levity to the situation. And there are moments as we progress, we do see him exhibiting some more complex emotion. But the way he deals with those things is very robotic, and I really love that. So even though you see him, let's say, start getting angry, for instance, he starts to think about why he was getting angry and try to solve that in a very logical way. So I felt like he was the most consistent character, and he had an actual arc here. I felt like, and you were really rooting for him, and sadly, I have to say that he's probably one of the very few characters I did root for in this. So my next favorite character is a young boy named Paul, and he's played by Felix Jameson. Now he's a side character as well, similar to Father. He's probably lower on the cast of characters than Father in terms of what they have to do with the narrative, but I believed in this kid's performance, and you could see the struggles, and he is torn between the two sides. And I haven't seen this kid before, but I really look forward to what he does next. Now, I don't want to say his performance was amazing in any way, but he really sold the character. He was almost a vessel character where we're trying to experience the world through him to a degree. Next will be Mother, the lead character, the character you see in all the posters, played by Amanda Collin. Now, this is where I start to have problems. So, Mother, at the beginning, feels much like what we would expect, similar to Father. She's very mechanical, very analytical, but then she starts showing these emotions of altruism or sadness or anger, just very human emotions that seem to be outside of what she may or may not be capable of. And you'll notice this through the few first episodes and later on, obviously, where she's going back and forth. Now, the problem I had with it, now this is explained later, okay? I don't want you to think that this never makes any sense. It does. It's just the problem with it is that she never acknowledged it, nor did anyone around her acknowledge it. I think the best way I can describe it is, let's say you get really angry for some reason and you blow up and you look back on that moment and you're like, man, I wasn't myself. And I think that her acknowledging those things, because presumably she's very aware of everything that's going on, including her own actions, that she might notice these inconsistencies. And for us as an audience, I think that would have been a great opportunity to create this mystery of who she is, where she comes from, and why is she like this? Why isn't she like Father? What's the difference here? Because she very much goes in and out of these robotic and then almost indistinguishable from human traits and reactions. And I kept wondering to myself, what's going on? Is this a bad performance? Is it bad writing? What is it? And as I said, we do learn of her origin, and possibly it's an explanation of why she's doing the things she's doing. But if these actions were off, they should have been acknowledged, because if no one is acknowledging them, if she's not acknowledging them, then everything's normal. There's nothing that's off. There's nothing that's different. And unfortunately, we have this character that could have had a very interesting arc. It could have taken us to places that I think we really could have empathized with her, but it fell flat. It just didn't work for me. Now, I don't want to blame the actress here. I think she just was doing what she was directed to do. I totally blame the writers here, or the directors directing her how to act and emote and convey her feelings on film. And it's just unfortunate because, you're kind of hoping for this Alicia Vikander performance like an Ex Machina, right? Where you're thinking, is she really like this? Is she really nice? Or is she just hiding something? And you're not going to see that here. You're not going to have that kind of nuance that you have in that film. But it's not the worst. I don't want to say it's the worst. I'm just bringing it up and going on about it because it's disappointing, especially with someone who's your lead character. Now let's talk about Marcus. Travis Fimmel. I'd never seen him before. I knew he was in Vikings, but I've never seen him in anything. And he's an atheist who goes undercover masquerading as one of these Mithraic people because he's hiding from something along with his wife. The thing is here is he's just a really weird actor. I mean, he makes odd faces in odd situations. He delivers lines in a very odd way. And someone who is one of the main characters, another missed opportunity. I feel like this is really the show of missed opportunities because he has an interesting backstory. He's struggling with identity, who he was, who he's become. And I think that would have been a great chance to just, once again, make us empathize with these people. That's what anybody wants in a show. That's the way we get hooked into a narrative. And I'll say it again, with a show like this that is story light, you need good character work. And this show just does not have it. And finally, last and least, is Campion, played by Wynta McGrath. Now, this kid who has an uncanny resemblance to young Conan and Conan the Barbarian is probably the worst part of the show. This kid is annoying. He is clearly positioned as the hope of humanity, maybe somebody to bring these two opposing factions together. He's the chosen one character we all know. But man, this kid, he just kills me. He's so damn annoying. I mean, there's these weird character development things where he's almost trying to convince everybody to be vegan. And I'll get into that more later when I talk about the actual narrative itself and how it plays out. But there would have been a great chance or opportunity, I think, to make this character just flawed and maybe rise up from the ashes and become who he needs to be. And maybe you hate him in the beginning, but then you learn to love him. But you always hate this kid. Of all the kids in this show, he's the worst. He's not a terrible actor, but man, the storyline he was given and the lines he was given are just cringy as hell. Once again, missed opportunity. You have this character who is there to rise up and bring people together, or at the very least, have you root for this person and see the world through their eyes. Like, it just completely falls flat. And I couldn't stand the scenes he was in. I luckily, Paul was there to help make the scenes better. And you can really tell the differences in, maybe it is performance or the script, but when they're in scenes together, it really, really shows. All right, enough with the actors. Let's talk about the story. So as I said, the story is very simple. I mean, we have these androids with these human embryos, and they're trying to raise them. And is it to repopulate the Earth? We have no idea yet. They're on this planet, Kepler 22b, I think. And then we immediately get into the opposition with the Mithraic people. And there's a clash, and episode 1 was great. I think episode 1 really set the stage. It had extremely high climactic points and then low character moments. The conflict is just weird as hell. I mean, it makes sense on the surface where you have belief and non-belief, but both of these factions are put in situations where their numbers are diminished and they're wandering in this barren world and trying to figure things out. And when they finally come to a clash, that things get just muddled. There's nothing interesting there in terms of what the religion is or what the history of it is. And that's okay. I just think that whatever the showrunners were trying to do or the writers were trying to do with atheism and belief, they really let it drop. I mean, there's nothing compelling here. There's nothing thought-provoking here. It's just another wasted opportunity. And I feel like I'm going to keep saying that over and over again here. So on with the story. It's very disconnected, and it doesn't feel like it really goes anywhere. There's a lot of random events, and the bulk of the show is kind of, once again, trying to make a character-driven story. We have Campion, who they're running out of food, and he tries to go forth and do something that's not violent and not kill these alien creatures that are on the planet for food. He wants to be a vegan, and it just is annoying as hell, and it feels out of place, and it feels preachy. And I know what they were trying to do here. They were trying to take these ideals, right? These ideologies, and make us think about them. Right? Which is totally fine. I mean, I'm an atheist personally, but speaking of that, I hated the way they treated atheism in this. And it's not because I'm angry because I believe it was depicted incorrectly. I mean, it's just simply unbelief. That's it. There's no dogma to it. But anyway, what I'm getting at is early on, and I believe this is in episode 1, so this isn't so much of a spoiler, but we have this scene where Mother is educating the children, teaching them about the history of the world or where they came from and how to behave and etc., etc. The problem is she's teaching them about this other religion and really trying to convince them to like be an atheist, be an atheist. It's the only way, be an atheist. The problem with that logic is, now just imagine, you have a bunch of kids, babies, embryos. You put them on a planet, are they going to just manifest the idea of a god or a higher power out of nothing? Of course they're not. The reason why we as humans concocted these ideas is because we had no one to explain what the sun was or what the stars were or any of that or how physics works, right? That's why we created gods. And to get to that point, you have to have civilizations over thousands upon millions of years to where you create these narratives and these stories and these legends because of it. But what happens here is Mother is feeding him this information. She's planting these seeds of belief in his head, which are completely unnecessary. And it felt just like a terrible plot device to get Campion to be in opposition to this atheist ideology. It was just completely stupid, and I have no idea why they did that. I mean, I have to imagine these writers, they're very good at what they do, and they're intelligent, and they're handpicked by, who knows, Ridley Scott or Aaron Guzikowski, and what the fuck? That's all I want to know. Like, this is not like masterwork storytelling knowledge you need to have. And that is essentially what you see throughout the show. You see just these weird ideas that come out of nowhere. You see these things that you think, well, why don't you just do that? Well, why don't you just do that? As it being super easy. And the sad thing is when a show or a movie or any kind of media immerses you enough and makes something believable enough, you never question those things. The only time you question those things is when something feels off. Now, I know maybe a lot of you out there don't think about story like I do because I do write. And so everything I watch or read is an education, right? I always want to learn something from it. And so I don't want to say I'm watching things to be completely analytical. I do just want to enjoy a show or a movie or anything. But it's almost just this discordant note or this fucking rock in my head that hits me. And I'm like, what the fuck is that? And this show has that in spades, unfortunately. You have so many characters that have these potentially interesting backstories and parts where you could really make their arc compelling from beginning to end, and it's just lost. It's funny because the stage was set. I mean, it's as if these writers like, oh, hey, look at, we're going to have all these opposing forces and an opposition, and we have like a positive or we have a negative, almost just like the religion, right? We have a binary system. We have belief and non-belief. And I thought they were going to take that through the characters and it was just going to make everybody have these great arcs, and it was going to be cathartic at the end. But man, did they drop the ball like crazy. And speaking of the ending, it's the very end of the last episode, and something happens and you're like, well, why didn't you just do that? And it's this melodramatic, ridiculous scene that just makes me not even want to watch a season 2. It was a joke. And if you don't think it's a joke, please tell me in the comments why. I mean, it was hokey as all hell. All right, I know I've been really harsh on the show and I've been swearing more than I usually do, but it's really coming from a place of love, okay? It's coming from the fact that the way this show looked and the people behind it and what could have been, right? I mean, they weren't heavy on exposition, which was a huge thing. I mean, you're shown these great set pieces and flashbacks and bits and pieces of what society used to be like. And so there's just this great world that I wanted to explore, and there's these characters who I was hoping would be interesting to follow, and just for every good moment in this show, there's at least 5 terrible ones. And it's a tragedy. All right, I'm done ranting. I'm done talking about what I don't like. It's time to give my review score. With all of that said, I'm going to give Raised by Wolves, a 5 out of 10. It is a completely average show with stunning visuals and art direction that is really just muddied from something like, say, a 3, pulls it up to a 5 to bring it to an even average. And I have to tell you that I'm severely disappointed. I love the idea of new IPs. I hate sequels. I hate people just ripping off properties and bringing them to a different medium. I think this could have been a great opportunity to do something different, to show people that, hey, you can create something from nothing. You can have a brand new idea and you can create a following and tell a compelling story and hopefully make money. Now, I know this show is going on to a season 2, so it got enough whatever it needed to move on and get the green light. But I don't know that I'm gonna continue. This show was a bit of a struggle for me. There are things I really liked about it. There were episodes that were halfway decent, but all in all, it was kind of a slog, much like Lovecraft Country, which I have also agreed to finish. So that review will be coming soon. And this is what I hate about TV shows is that they take so damn long to finish. And if they're not that great, you feel like you just wasted so much of your life. So keep an eye out on the episode 1 to 3 reviews where I hopefully find something in the conclusion of the first act that makes me keep going and spending more of my time that I can never have back on this story. But once again, I would like to really commend the production department, the art department. I mean, you did something great here, and I will never forget that. I will always appreciate that, despite the fact that I didn't really care for the show. So thank you for doing your part and elevating this to a much higher level and giving someone like myself, who's a huge sci-fi fan, something different to look at. All right, I'm done. And if you know, I write fiction. So if you'd like to see me create and not just critique, because I think if you're going to talk about something, you should also put yourself out there and show people what you're doing and open yourself up to the hate and the criticism too. So what I've done is created this series called Worth 1,000 Words, where I pick a piece of artwork and I write a 1,000 word short story to it on the spot with no outline. I just go. So if you're into storytelling, if you're into writing or script writing or anything like that, or you just want to read a good or not good story that I've created, I think you'll enjoy it. So I encourage you to check that out. And thanks for sticking with me for this long. I know it was a bit longer than I usually do. So if you didn't agree with me, let me know in the comments below. I want to hear why you like the show. If you did agree with me, or if there's some points that I didn't make them for me. I would love to see it. I always love to see things that I didn't quite think of or I didn't notice, and just get a glimpse as to like what you guys like to see and what makes a story for you. All right, I am done for real now. Thank you for watching, as always, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.